All right, would you just look at that environment and this environment and this one? Look at Spider-Man's awesome suit. Look at that sunset. Everything we just saw took less than 10 seconds to look at, but each one of those shots took a team of people years to create. It took the team at Santa Monica a whole stinking year to make the final model of Kratos. You know all that awesome art you just run by in Call of Duty? Yeah, this single object here took someone probably a day to make. And you're too busy whipping your camera around like a hot pocket eater trying to impress Ninja to see it. Slow down, son. Enjoy the hard work it took to make this look good and run well, so you can spin your camera around like a tryhard and still hit 144 FPS. Games have to look good and run well. As game artists, this is partially their responsibility. Game artists work so hard to do so many awesome tricks to make games run well and still look good at the same time. During my journey of stumbling through this challenging art form, I've discovered a lot of great techniques that help keep things fast and clean. Here are my top 5 tips to optimize your game. Alright, tiled textures. This is one of the oldest tricks in 3D art. Because textures are one of the biggest overheads when it comes to game graphics, you want to use as few as possible. You don't want to use a unique texture for every surface in your game, so you've got to pick the larger surfaces like the ground and walls to utilize tiling for. If you do it right, no one will even know, and you can slap a few decals on to break up the repeating. Most texturing tools today like Substance Painter and Quixel automatically generate tiling textures for you. But let me show you real quick how you can do it the old-fashioned way in Photoshop. Cue the time lapse. Alright, trim sheets are kind of a more customizable tiling texture, and they're awesome. They are most often used for making buildings and large objects that need a lot of detail. The idea is to take the different strips and sections of the texture to make various shapes and objects. If you get good at it, you'll be able to make all kinds of unique assets, and they'll all be pulling from a single texture. Here's a good resource from Insomniac Games if you want to know a little bit more about how they used it in their workflow. I believe they also used this technique in Spider-Man as well. So this guy here made this entire environment with a single trim sheet. Crazy. LODs, which stands for level of detail. Most games use this technique everywhere, but it's most utilized when you have a large amount of objects in a scene that are all viewed from far away. LODs simply swap any given object from a high poly model to a low poly model based off of how far it is from the camera. You can create as many LODs as you like so that as the camera gets further from the object, it'll keep swapping to lower poly models that you've set up. An easy way to make your own LODs is simply take it into Blender and hit decimate. Do that a couple of times and add those unique models to your LOD prefab. Bob's your uncle. Fake details. This one's a little less straightforward. It'll take your own personal artistic discernment to figure out. From a regular viewing distance, this green trash can looks pretty detailed, right? But a lot of this detail is fake. If I take advantage of my normal map and a little bit of ambient occlusion, I don't have to actually model the details, which saves on a lot of computing power. This fence looks pretty normal, but this is actually just a tiling texture, and this edge piece is just a vertical tiling texture. Sometimes you've just got to be creative and come up with ways to trick people into thinking it's detailed. Channel packing. Most materials nowadays are using the PBR workflow. PBR stands for physically based rendering. These materials require at least an albedo, which is just the color image, a metallic map, which is for reflections, and a normal map for the detailed shapes and bumps. Some PBR materials will have additional textures for ambient occlusion, displacement, emission, subsurface scattering, and so on. But that's a lot of textures just for one object. How do we optimize that? This is where channel packing comes in. This is actually a new thing I learned and I'm pretty excited about it. A typical image has 4 channels, RGBA, red, green, blue, and alpha. We can utilize these individual channels to potentially combine all the necessary textures into one image. Texturing software like Substance Painter and Quixel will automatically do this for you in the export settings, but let me show you really quick how you can do it straight out of Photoshop, the old-fashioned way. Okay, so if you're going to be doing channel packing, the textures you pack can only be grayscale because each channel is a value from black to white. And so let's say for the red channel, let's just do a quick little example. I'll just draw something in here. For the green channel, I'll just draw something. Blue channel, I draw something. So these aren't separate channels yet. We'll do that for blue. These aren't separate channels yet. All I did was make 3 different folders and I just named them appropriately. So the magic comes in is when you double click one of your folders and you go here and turn off green and blue. So it's only showing the red channel for everything that's in this folder. Hit OK. Do the same thing with green. Turn off the red and blue, and then blue, double click it, turn off the red and green. Okay, so this obviously doesn't make any sense here, and this is a crazy mess. But if you go to the actual channels tab and you click red, all it shows is what was in the red folder. And then go to green, all it shows is what's in the green channel, and so on and so forth. So it's crazy because somehow it's able to extract all this craziness and separate them into 3 different channels. And for the alpha, which is your 4th channel that you can work with, you just hit plus right here, automatically adds the alpha channel. And instead of working on the alpha channel in the actual layers tab, you have to work on it in the channels tab, and you can just paint in here and do whatever. So the idea is you could potentially have all your textures in one image. Let's say your actual albedo is just grayscale and you can customize the color inside of your engine, and then the metallic and ambient occlusion, whatever else you want to use, those are all grayscale, so those could be in a single channel. I think that's about it. All you have to do is just save this out as a Photoshop file and break it up inside of your game engine. Oh dang, I almost forgot another tip. Bonus tip, texel density. There's a really good document on this, so I'll link it below, but it's basically when you make sure all your environments have the same amount of texture resolution. You don't want to have crazy resolution for objects because 1, that looks silly, and 2, it's potentially a big waste of texture memory. I believe the standard is 512 per meter, but AAA games are probably using 1024 per meter. Look it up. Okay. So I'm not an experienced professional, but these are just some of the things I've discovered while working on our game, The Pedestrian. When we first started making The Pedestrian, I barely knew anything about game art, but with the help of many online resources, I've slowly demystified a lot of the magic that always baffled me in the past. Being the only artist on the project can be challenging at times, but it's really rewarding to see the product almost finished. If you find The Pedestrian interesting, please consider wishlisting it on Steam. Also, I've put all the links below for the resources in the video. Thanks for watching.